rebel soul child, got a fist balled. I'm a respawn of ancestors, and I'm blessed, They are not him, tell him fess up. I get check stub, hella carefree, nothing scares me, hella reckless. Yeah, I got next up.
What's good? I'm back with another video, and in this tutorial, I'm gonna break down how I created this album art visualizer. It's actually a lot simpler than what it looks like. Nevertheless, we're gonna break it all down. Make sure you hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's go. This is just a photo with a default timing of 5 seconds. I'm just gonna take it into Fusion. Now in Fusion, I'm gonna grab the polygon mask and connect it to my media 1. I'm gonna go into the inspector tab. I'm gonna hit invert. For this effect, you basically want to animate like the joints of like hand, elbow, and things like that. Basically anything that can actually move. So with the polygon, I'm actually gonna hold control and zoom in a little bit and move this down. I'm basically just gonna go through and mask out his hand. And then I'm actually gonna go into the toolbar here and grab the Mac control node and bring it to my node flow. Mac control will actually allow us to be able to apply masks with actually more or less destroying the media. So we can continue to use the media 1 node instead of having to copy it over and over again. We can just use that 1 node and the different outputs. So I'm actually gonna disconnect this poly node, move it over. I'm gonna right click from the output and then drop it on the Mac control. It's gonna give me this little menu, and I'm gonna select garbage matte. And then that's more or less just gonna give us back our original image. So now I'm actually gonna select these. I'm gonna move them up a little bit, and with the Mac control selected, I'm gonna grab a transform node. Then I'm gonna take the output of the transform and connect it back to the media 1. It's gonna give me a merge node. I'm gonna take the output of the merge node and connect it to the media 1. Connecting my merge 1 output to the media out allows everything I just did with the nodes to actually become visible. Now if I go over here to the transform and I move up my center axis, you can see the hand is being moved, and that's what we're gonna animate. I'm gonna double click this to reset it. Now I'm gonna use the transform node to actually animate the joint. I'm gonna go back to the first frame. I'm gonna set the keyframe on angle. Now I'm working on 24 FPS timeline, so I'm actually gonna go to 24, which will make the animation 1 second long. And before I actually animate the angle, actually I'm gonna move my pivot point. I'm gonna move this, which is a little X here on the screen, and move it up. I'm basically gonna place it right over the joint, more or less with the wrist joint. Then I can animate the wrist back and forth. You got a little bit of this little bracelet or whatever here from his coat. I can just go back and change the mask to fix that. And it's going a little bit too high. I want to be very subtle, so I'm gonna leave it around 5.6, and you see a little subtle animation. I'm gonna go back to my poly node. The poly mask in DaVinci Resolve is designed for rotoscoping. So anytime you make any alteration to the mask on a different frame from what you originally created the mask, is going to animate that change. But for this, we don't need that. So I'm gonna go over here into the inspector tab where it says right click here for shape animations. I'm gonna right click, then I'm gonna select remove polyline. What it's gonna do is actually cut off the keyframing for our poly mask. That way when we make any alterations, it won't change. And I go through here and actually delete some of these little frames here. Now we play it back. It's only moving on wrist joint. Now we want his wrist joint to move back and forward. We can actually fix that in the spline editor. So with the transform node select, you can go up here to spline and see transform. If you have more than one node or more than one selection here, hit this little 3 dots menu here, and then select show only selected tools. The only one I have selected is transform, so that's what it's gonna show. Click this icon here to zoom to fit. You can click this icon here at the bottom to select all frames. You're gonna hit F on the keyboard to flatten out the keys, and then down here, you're gonna select ping pong. And what this is gonna do, if I open this up further, it's gonna animate those keyframes. I'm gonna hold control and zoom back on the mouse wheel. It's actually creating endless keyframes for however long this animation is. I'm gonna go back and close the spline editor, bring this back down, and now you see his hand moving back and forward, and it's gonna animate throughout the whole selection. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, you can see the hand underneath his hand. We're gonna get rid of that now. We go back to the toolbar here and grab the paint node. I'm gonna hold shift and bring it down and add it to my node flow. With your dual viewers on, I'm gonna put this in viewer 1 by hitting this little icon, or you can click on it and hit 1 on the keyboard. I'm gonna bring this down, and basically what I'm gonna do is paint this out. Up here at the top of the brush controls, you wanna change this to stroke. In the inspector tab, you're gonna select clone brush. You're gonna go to brush controls, you're gonna increase the softness, and you can leave the size pretty much as it is according to whatever content you're editing. So I'm gonna hold control and zoom in. Now the way the clone brush works, you have to select a piece of your media that you wanna clone, and then you're gonna use it as a paintbrush more or less. I wanna paint out his hand. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is a still frame, and you basically just you more or less want to blur out his hand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold Alt on the keyboard. I'm gonna select this part of his coat down here and then just brush it out. And as you see, you get this hard line here cutting out. That's where the media cuts off it. So I'm gonna move up a little bit, hold Alt, make a selection. And you can tell the selection's been made once the little X is placed there. And I'm gonna go down here and brush this out. Like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect because you're more or less just trying to create a background to mask out his hand. Now for his finger here, I'm actually gonna select the part of his shirt. It probably is do better with the black background. Also, I'm gonna select the part of his face for the skin tone. Just kind of blur this out a little bit here. Kind of actually more or less kind of matches up the rest of his face. So now we go back and we actually play it back. This is a very subtle movement. It blends in pretty well. You can make further corrections to your mask if need be. Mine's a little rough because I kind of rush through it, but makes you want to zoom in. These little alterations like this, see all this space in between the finger and the coat, you want to close those little gaps. Now from there, you pretty much repeat the process. So we're gonna do the same thing for his other hand. To mask out his hand, we're gonna select the media 1 and we're gonna grab the polygon mask again. We're gonna hit invert and we're gonna go through and mask out his hand. Again, you wanna mask out on the joint. And once you got your mask, you're gonna hold shift and disconnect. I'm gonna disconnect this in poly mask. I'm gonna grab a Mac control. I'm gonna right click, connect to garbage mat. And then I'm gonna take the output of this and connect it to the yellow input of the Mac control. If you hold Alt and select the line to connect the two, it actually create a little elbow joint, and it's just something you can use for organization purposes. This also double as an output, so actually you can take this and connect it to the next Mac control. Now with your Mac control selected, and grab another transform node. Then I take the output of the transform node, I'm gonna connect it to the merge 1. That's gonna give me a new merge. And with the transform 2 selected, I can go here and move it over, and same thing. I have the control over this hand and I'm gonna animate it. I'm gonna go to frame 24. I'm going to the inspector tab, set a keyframe on the angle, and I'm gonna move my pivot. I basically want to put the pivot right over the joint. Then I'm gonna animate his hand. Then I go back to my first frame. I'm gonna hit this little icon here to reset it. This allows you to reset back to 0, but also creating a keyframe at the same time. When I play it back, I'm gonna zoom out. You can see if you play it back, you got both his hands moving. Then you select your transform 2 on the spline and do the same thing as before. I'm gonna hit zoom to fit, select all, and then hit F to flatten, and then hit ping pong. Got his hands animated. Then of course you want to grab a paint node like we did with the first one and paint this out. So with the merge 2 selector, I can just grab the paint from up here. I'm gonna put this in the first viewer. Now once again, you got to go ahead and change this to stroke, and then select the clone brush. You know, brush controls, you can increase or decrease the size and then increase the softness. And increasing the softness basically will allow whatever you painted not to look so harsh, and it basically better blend in. Then I'm gonna select this coat and start brushing it out. These here are 2 contrasting colors, so you actually want to pick something a little bit closer to the subject. So make sure you go around and pick this little sleeve, and actually blend it into this part here. So I'm gonna select it over here as well, trying to blend it out as much as possible. And since this is like a little bit brighter and it's closer to his shoulder, I can select from his shoulder or another part of his coat. Oh, I actually made a mistake here. I actually accidentally painted it out on the wrong end. That happened because of the way my nodes are placed. The paint 2 node is actually behind my merge, which actually needs to be in front of it. With it being behind, it's basically applying to pretty much everything in front of it. So if I hold shift to remove it and place it in front, let go, add it to the node flow, the clone effect that I created will still remains intact. You can see a little bit of his hand here, so I'm gonna go back and paint that out. And for this, I'm not actually gonna grab his coat. I'm gonna grab a little piece of this wall here and just kind of brush out his hand. You can see it applied there. Max look a little bit too harsh, so I'm actually gonna go into my poly node and add a little bit of softness to it. And it's basically just a repeat process. I'm gonna do it one more time for the necklace. So once again, I go back to my media 1, select the poly node, and then I'm going here and mask out his necklace. Of course, you wanna make sure you include this little hinge here because you're gonna animate on the hinge or on the joint. Now, once your mask is done, we're gonna disconnect the poly node by holding shift and move the poly node over here to the end. I'm gonna grab my Mac control again. I'm gonna right click, connect to the Mac control garbage mat. Instead of going back to the media 1, I'm just take this output from here and connect it to the yellow input. Then I'm gonna hold Alt and grab this little line here and create another elbow joint. And that's acting as my media 1 is still connecting to this media 1. Of course, grab the Mac control, grab a transform node, then take the output of the transform, connect it to the merge 2. Then I can go in here to the transform 3. Then I'm gonna move the pivot point down and go back to my frame 24. Under angle, I set a keyframe. We'll move it ever so slightly to the right a little. Then I'm gonna go back to frame 0, hit the little icon, and in front of this merge 2, I'm actually gonna grab the paint node and place it in between the merge 2 and the merge 3. I'm gonna hold shift to add it to my node flow. I'm gonna hit 1 on the keyboard to bring it up to the first viewer. I'm gonna go over to my brush control, select stroke, and inspector tab. I'm gonna select the clone tool. I'm gonna go to my brush control and increase the softness. I'm gonna zoom in on my subject. Actually, I'm gonna bring the brush size down a little bit. Then I'm gonna hold Alt and select the part of his shirt. And I'm getting to paint it out. I'm gonna click on my transform 3, go to the spline, then go back to my spline for the transform 3, hit zoom to fit, go here to select all, hit F to flatten, and then select, you play it back. All 3 of them are now animated. Now from here, we're actually gonna go back and add a drop shadow. So under the transform, I'm gonna hit control and space, type in drop. The drop shadow adds a little bit of a little shadow to it and make it a little bit more believable. I'm gonna do the same thing for transform 2, grab drop shadow. Not really necessary for the necklace because it's actually on the black background, but we're gonna do it anyway. So transform, drop shadow. If I zoom in on my subject and I select the drop shadow and I hit control and P to disable, you see the little shadow disables and re-enables. It adds just a little extra sauce to it. Probably not necessary, but if you want to make it black and white, just go in here and grab the CC node, hold shift, add it to the node flow. From here, you're just gonna drop down the saturation. And just dropping the saturation will make it black and white, but it's more of a dull black and white. So I'm going here and I'm gonna add a little contrast. It's gonna actually make it a little darker. And then I'm gonna add a little gang, just a little bit, kind of more or less look like there's a light on them. And that's gonna do it for this video. I appreciate you watching. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well, so you know when I upload any new videos. Until next time, I'll see you later.